In the days when Israel had no king, and all did what was right in their own eyes, after Joshua's magnificent defeat of Jericho, after the elders had passed on, in the time when the judges came, Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord. They chased after beliefs and ideas of foreign nations. Yahweh stopped providing. Yahweh stopped protecting, and Israel fell. Now that's epic, isn't it? And that to me is like this feel of greatness just happening, just this whole story. And go along with the video that Ryan just played. I mean, you can feel that in that description. And you know what the cool thing is? True story. True story. So you guys are going to be studying Judges for a few weeks, several weeks, and today we're going to be looking at Judges chapter 3, verses 12 through 30. So those of you who have brought a Bible, go ahead and turn to Judges. But before we get into today's text, here's some scenery. Here's some things that are going on. So this is a little bit in chapter 2. This is verse 11. And the people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord and served the Baals. And then down in 14 and 15. So the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel, and he gave them over to plunderers who plundered them. And he sold them into the hand of the surrounding enemies, so they could no longer withstand their enemies. Whenever they marched out, the hand of the Lord was against them for harm, as the Lord had warned, as the Lord had sworn to them, and they were in terrible distress. Then the Lord raised up judges, who saved them out of the hand of those who plundered them. Yet they did not listen to the judges, for they whored after other gods and bowed down to them. And then in chapter 3, it says here in verse 7, and the people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. They forgot the Lord their God and served the Baals and the Asheroth. Therefore the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel, and he sold them into the hand of the Cushite Rishathaim, king of Mesopotamia. And the people of Israel served Cushan Rishathaim 8 years. But when the people of Israel cried out to the Lord raised up a deliverer for the people of Israel, who saved them, Othniel, the son of Kenaz. And then down in 11 it said, so the land had rest 40 years, and Othniel, the son of Kenaz, died. And back in chapter 2, in verse 19, there's a lot of verses I know, but track with me. But whenever the judge died, they turned back and were more corrupt than their fathers, going after other gods, serving them and bowing down to them. So this was the cycle of Israel, the kingless. And this is where we start our text in chapter 3, verse 12. And the people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. And so begins the epic tale of Ehud and the assassin's blade. So chapter 3, verse 12. And the people of Israel again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord strengthened Eglon, the king of Moab, against Israel, because they had done what was evil in the sight of the Lord. He gathered to himself the Ammonites, the Amalekites, and he went and defeated Israel. And they took possession of the city of palms. And the people of Israel served Eglon, the king of Moab, 18 years. 18 years. 18 years ago, I was 18. How many of you can raise your hand if you've been alive for longer than 18 years? Very select few in this room. Okay? So 18 years. They've been in service to another nation. They've been in service to another king. Okay? The freedoms that you have that you probably don't even think about, they didn't have those. Their parents didn't come to them and say, okay, you need to do good in school so that you can go to college and get a good job. That wasn't the instruction they got from their parents. The instruction they get from their parents is, don't be stupid and make the king mad at us, so he comes in here and takes whatever he wants. Their instructions were survival. That's what they did. That it was just survive, live under the rule of a king, of someone else. Someone who could decide that at any moment, your house is now my house, get out. Any moment, your food is now my food, get out. Any moment, your wife is now my wife. Your children are now my children. You don't have anything. Nothing belongs to you. Everything that you think you have is mine. That's what the king could say. That's what the king of Moab could go and do. So their parents said that don't be stupid. They can come in and do this at any time. So that's what they lived in. That's all that they knew. 18 years. And so in verse 15 it says, "And the people of Israel cried out to the Lord, and the Lord raised up for them a deliverer." So a judge came. So here's the deal. Okay? Ehud. The people cried out, and this is when the story goes from really cool to freaking awesome. Alright? So here's Ehud. Okay? He's going to take and fashion for himself a blade. That's about a cubit in length. Those bricks, I love those bricks, by the way. It's about a cubit in length. That means about from the elbow to the tip of the finger. That's his blade that he's going to make. He's going to make this blade. All right, and he attaches it to his right thigh. Okay? The text tells us that he's a left-handed man, that he's left-handed. He attaches the blade to the right thigh so that it's unsuspecting. He puts it under his clothes. So he's hiding a blade, and he goes to give tribute to Eglon. Okay? And Eglon is described as a fat man. This is who he is, right? This is Eglon's story, okay? He's not like this great war guy who conquered many nations. He's not like this big planner and schemer and conniving and doing all these things. No, he's described as a fat man. This is his legacy, okay? So here's a king, here's a guy in charge who's got so much wealth, so much power, that he can just sit around all day and consume. And that's all he does. He takes and he consumes, and he takes and he consumes so much that he's remembered as a fat man. So he goes to them, so Ehud goes to Eglon, and he's going to give him tribute. And he goes to him, and he gives him tribute, and then he leaves, and he's going with his crowd, and they get so far, and then he stops and says, "You guys go on ahead." And Ehud turns back. And he goes back to Eglon, and he tells Eglon, "I have a secret for you." And Eglon yells out, "Silence!" And everybody leaves and clears out. And so Ehud approaches Eglon, and he says, "I have a message from God." Now Eglon knows who Ehud is. Eglon knows who Ehud's people are. Eglon knows that who his God is. And so when he hears this, he's probably thinking, okay, I'm going to get some sort of blessing. I'm going to get some sort of benefit. I'm going to get some sort of provision from the God of the Hebrews. And so he stands up. And as he stands up, Ehud reaches down, takes the blade, shoves it into the side, buries it into his gut. So much so that when he pulls his hand out of his belly, the fat closes around the blade. And the blade is gone. Okay? Now, I want you to understand that this story is so great that I want to give you some context. And what I see when I hear this, when I read this story, what I see is this.
Oh no.
This is Eglon. Okay? And I picture a movie when I read this story. I picture all this great, fanciful, epic stuff. And it even reads that way. When you read in find the page here. Verse 15. The Lord raised up from them a deliverer, Ehud, the son of Gera, the Benjamite, a left-handed man. I mean, you could just picture his descriptions.
Yes.
To throw that in there, it gives depth to the story, and it gives character, and it gives all these things. And so I picture this movie. I picture this epic things going on. And so as he leaves, Ehud stabs him in the gut. He falls down. And then we see we can read here again some more in chapter 3. It says, when he had gone, the servants came, and when they saw that the doors of the roof chamber were locked, They thought, surely he's relieving himself in the closet of the cool chamber. Well, I forgot to mention something. When he stabs him, and he pulls the hand out, and the fat closes over, and the dung came out. That's what you expect, and then when that happens, the dung came out. Okay? So back to chapter 3, verse 23. And Ehud went out to the porch, and he closed the doors of the roof chamber behind him and locked them. And when he had gone, the servants came. And when they saw the doors of the roof chamber were locked, they thought, surely he's relieving himself in the closet of the cool chamber. And they waited till they were embarrassed. But when he did not open the doors of the roof chamber, they looked. They took the key and opened them. And there lay their Lord dead on the floor. And so Ehud escapes, and he runs down to the hill country by Ephraim. And he grabs the trumpet, and he blows the trumpet, and he calls to him his people. And he begins to speak to them as a commander of an army, encouraging them, telling them we can stand for the Lord and we can do all these things. And he holds up his sword and says, "You will not take our freedom!" and the two armies, then the mighty men of Moab come. These able-bodied men, these warriors. And they've drawn a line, and these two armies chasing towards each other and clash into each other. And an epic battle ensues, and tens of thousands of bodies strewn all over the ground. And the land had peace for 80 years. It's a great story, isn't it? Why is it in the Bible? Why is a story about some fat guy getting stabbed in the gut and his dung coming out
Because it's awesome.
in the Bible? It is awesome. It does. And things like that, I'm awestruck by them. I'm like, that is so amazing. That is so epic. And I mean, you see the video that Ryan put up, the battles, and the fat man, and all the fighting, and it's just there, and it's crazy, and it's epic. Why is it in the Bible? What if I tell you that Ehud isn't the hero? But that the Lord of the Ruins is. See, again and again, you're going to find that Israel does evil on the side of the Lord. And they're going to face repercussions of it. And they will cry out to God, and God will deliver them. Israel keeps messing things up. And when they turn back to God, He fixes it. God uses the judges. But that doesn't make them heroes. In fact, you're going to notice as we go through some of the judges that many of them are not somebody that you should pattern your life after. They're not a glowing example of someone who chases after God's own heart. Take Ehud for an example. As epic as this story is, I don't want you to get too distracted by it. Ehud is an assassin. He sees darkness in the world, and he's compelled to punish it. He's not someone who's optimistic and sees the joy in life, but he's someone who focuses on judgment. He's one of God's judges. He's one of God's judges to bring about punishment. And if you look closely at Ehud's plan, okay, he's operating out of deception. He's crafting weapons of destruction. And he's stabbing someone in the gut with his own hand, and his hand's being covered in blood and guts. And then there's this escape. We look closely at what's being said here. It says that Ehud went out into the porch, and he closed the doors of the roof chamber behind him and locked them. And when he had gone, the servants came, and when they saw the doors of the roof chamber were locked, they thought, surely he's relieving himself by the closet of the cool chamber. Why do you think they thought he was relieving himself? The doors were locked out. What else? The smell. The smell of what? Dung. And it says they waited there and they were embarrassed. Why? Because they're standing outside a locked door while someone inside is taking a crap. It's kind of embarrassing.
He did yell at them to get out.
Yeah. Yeah, he did. He said, get out, and he ran to the bathroom. It's not looking pretty. So the smell is wafting out. Now this cool chamber is upstairs. Now heat rises. So probably what's making this cool is the fact that it's shaded and that there's airflow.
Not airflow.
So airflow is blowing this pleasant fragrance throughout the door, and they're smelling it, and they're embarrassed because they think he's in there relieving himself. And Ehud's escape plan says that he went out on the porch. Now we're not entirely sure what exactly that means, but there's historians that say that this porch is probably a reference to Ehud escaping through the latrine, which means he crawled through the toilet like a porta potty and crawls out a trench to where he can get out of this closet and lock these doors. And this closet would be somewhere where the janitors can then come and clean up the mess, because they didn't have plumbing like we do today. It's not as epic anymore, is it?
So it's ruined the awesome story.
It does. It really does. And this was Ehud, an assassin who saw darkness covered in blood and guts and dung. And so it loses its epicness. So not only was the enemy nations of Israel in ruins, not only was Israel as God's people in ruins, but Ehud's life was in ruins as well. The moral of this story is that no matter what mess we make, whether it's a big mess or it's a small mess, we should seek God. Seek Him in prayer. Look to God to speak to us through reading the Bible. Strive to connect with other mature Christians in the faith so that we can confess to them our mistakes and they can hold us accountable. See, if we seek to control our own lives, if we seek to be the masters of our own lives, make all the decisions, make all the plans, because that's what Ehud's doing. Ehud's using his own knowledge and his own skill to craft weapons, his own perspective of how dark and dangerous the world is and how it needs punished. This is Ehud's perspective, and God uses him. God uses him to be a judge to punish the enemies of Israel. God uses him as a means to punish those who live in defiance of God's authority. So we should seek after God. We should seek after being connected to other Christians. To not be in control of our own lives, not be in control of our own decisions, but to look for wisdom from others. To not sit back and think, I don't need God in my life. I don't need to focus on God every day. I don't need to read. I don't need to pray. I don't need to do these things because I'm doing all right. Guess what? You're living in ruins. And it might not feel like that now, but trust me. You'll eventually get to the point where you're crawling through the latrine. And you'll wish that you had a long time ago committed to daily devotion, daily commitment to Christ. So your attitude should be the same as that of Christ Jesus, who being in the very nature of God did not consider being equal with God as something to be grasped, but he made himself nothing, taking on the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. And after being made in the appearance of a man, he humbled himself and became obedient to death, even death on a cross. Therefore God exalted him to the highest place and gave him the name that is above every name, so that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. Those who seek to build their lives will live in ruins. The judges, they brought punishment on those who lived in defiance of God's authority. And the alternative is to be under the provision and the protection of the Lord of the ruins. Pray with me. Father, you are good. You are great. And you are holy.